everyone. I'm Wendell Jones, and welcome to Jones and Company. On this program, we examine national and sometimes international issues. And today on our program, we are going to do a bit of both, because we have a guest on our program who is an internationalist, because he is the Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth Secretariat, Marlborough House in England. Mr. Deodat Maharaj is our guest today, and he has been in the Bahamas organizing an upcoming big meeting of the Commonwealth. Mr. Maharaj, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here, Jones, and it's a pleasure to be here as well, Ian. Yes, I came to your beautiful land on Sunday a couple of days ago, and I've been working very closely with the Ministry of Education and other institutions that will be putting together the next Commonwealth Conference of Education Ministers. And after the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting, the Commonwealth Conference of Education Ministers is the second largest meeting that the Commonwealth normally convenes. And that meeting will be taking place next June right here in the Bahamas.
Next June? So you have a whole year to plan it, eh?
Yeah, no, it's a big, big event. And what I like very much is that the Bahamas, the institutions have taken it very seriously. I met with the National Steering Committee that has been put together well over a year in advance with all the stakeholders, the Ministry of Education, Customs, the airport colleagues, the security people, the hospital colleagues. So I think it augurs well, because if we all work together collectively, I'm sure that the Bahamas will be able to deliver a very successful conference.
What do you mean by a successful conference? What would make it a successful conference?
Yeah, so I come from a development background. So when I'm talking about a successful conference, A, you have the logistic and administrative arrangements. That's A. But B, and of equal or even more importance, given the challenges that we face in the Caribbean, I'm from the Caribbean, education is a key and absolutely vital issue. And when you look at the data in terms of girls outperforming boys by far, the high level of school dropouts, the special circumstances of countries such as the Bahamas in terms of delivering education, these are core and very critical and important issues. And these issues will be discussed at the upcoming conference. And we hope that we can learn from the experiences of other countries such as Malaysia and Singapore. They have done a good job in many areas. We have also a lot to share. So I think if we can learn and share from and with each other, and we can have a clear direction in terms of moving ahead, that will be a successful conference.
Very good. Godfrey?
Mr. Maharaj, I am a dying breed in the Bahamas, because I grew up in a colonial Bahamas where the Commonwealth had meaning. Among this newer generation who know nothing about colonialism, the Commonwealth doesn't mean very much. How relevant is the Commonwealth today as an institution that provides technical assistance, as an institution that embraces, the Queen says, what, a couple of billion people, when you include India? How relevant is it?
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting question. And perhaps the best way to respond is to talk about myself. I spent the last 12, 13 years working with a much larger organization, the United Nations Development Program. And UNDP has offices in over 150 countries in the world. It's a $1 billion organization. And when I was offered this opportunity, I thought about it, and I decided to accept the challenge and work for the Commonwealth. And the answer is why? To start with, I am from the Caribbean, and the Commonwealth is the only multilateral institution that really seeks the interest, I believe, and we're small states. 31 out of our 53 member countries are small states. And therefore, the Commonwealth is used as a platform to champion and to advocate for the interests of small island developing states and small states in general. That's one. In terms of technical assistance, I can be very specific in the case of the Bahamas. The Commonwealth is the only institution I know that does pioneering work in terms of marine zone delimitation. In the case of the Bahamas, for example, we have done technical work that will result eventually in an expansion of your exclusive economic zone and maritime waters by an additional 200,000 square kilometers. That means that the resources that you would have in the Bahamas would be much more than what exists now, certainly in the case of the ocean. In terms of small island developing states, the Commonwealth, for example, we are doing some interesting work in making a case that the international institutions should revisit the per capita income classification of countries like the Bahamas. So you know, for example, that we are classified as middle-income countries, for example, in the Caribbean, many of the Caribbean islands. And that middle-income classification, to my mind, is a very temporary phenomenon, because in the case of Grenada, for example, you all would remember Hurricane Ivan. And Hurricane Ivan caused damage in terms of 70% of the housing stock of Grenada, destroyed 30% of the housing stock, $1 billion in damages, equivalent to 2 years of GDP. We in the Commonwealth, what we are saying is that in the event of a situation like that, the international financial institution should suspend the debt obligations of countries such as Grenada. In the case of Jamaica, the debt management work that we have done has resulted in debt write-offs of $150 million. So I think these examples cite the value of the Commonwealth to countries such as the Bahamas.
But in the case of the Bahamas, Mr. Maharaj, the Bahamas has been disadvantaged by the fact that our per capita income is projected to be about $20,000 a year, which denies us the opportunity to get soft loans. But that $20,000 a year is a misnomer. That ain't true. Any Bahamian will tell you that the average per capita income in the Bahamas is not $20,000. But the international community has in some way victimized us in that respect and made us ineligible to get many of the loans at very low interest rates, which these other countries get and which we need. Because in this country, we have pockets of poverty. We have pockets of serious poverty.
No, I agree with you, absolutely. I fully agree with you. And when we look at the trends in the Caribbean, you see high levels of income accompanied by high levels of inequality. And the average really doesn't matter, to be quite honest. So I fully agree with you. And that's why in St. Lucia, in March of this year, we had our third biennial conference on small states. And the World Bank was there as well. And this is an issue that we raised with them. And at the technical level, there is agreement that this per capita classification really doesn't make sense for countries like the Bahamas, like Grenada, like St. Kitts and Nevis. And therefore, what we want to do is to advocate at the global level to ensure that this issue is remedied. I think a good opportunity is there in September of this year when there is a Small Island Developing States Conference in Apia, Samoa. But the key issue is that as a Caribbean, as a Pacific, as small island developing states, we have to speak with one voice and speak collectively on this issue.
But let me finish it. But other big countries in the Commonwealth, England, the UK, Canada, right, Australia, to some extent New Zealand, right, South Africa, are they projecting the argument for small island states like us in the fora, like the G20 meetings, where it really counts, about the predicament that countries like us face? These big countries got to carry the argument. Ain't nobody listen to St. Kitts and St. Vincent and the Bahamas.
And yes, I'm delighted that you have made that specific point, because the Commonwealth is the primary interlocutor on development issues between the G20 and developing countries. And as recent as about a month ago in Washington, D.C., we had the G20 Development Dialogue. And what we have done in the Commonwealth, we have brought in the La Francophonie countries. So we had the G20 at the technical level. We had La Francophonie and Commonwealth countries in Washington, comprising about 70 developing countries, raising precisely the same issues. Our Secretary General, we will be meeting with Australia, which is chairing the G20 presidency, immediately after the SITS conference in Samoa, to actually advocate on these particular issues. So I think, as I noted earlier, if we speak collectively I'm sure we will get traction on these particular
But the
issues.
advocacy hasn't gone anywhere because they've been advocating for a long time. Sonny Ramsfall, who was Secretary General of the Commonwealth, who I interviewed many years ago, he would have ventured or made comments on the same points that you are making, and the need for the Commonwealth to intervene in these issues. But to what avail? I mean, nothing has changed.
Yeah, but I tend to have a different view. I mean, I've been working on these development issues for over 20 years internationally. And what I see is that, take for example, the statement that will emerge for the post-2015 development framework. The fact that in Mexico, about 2 to 3 weeks ago, there was this global forum on development effectiveness. The issues that were raised by the Commonwealth and La Francophonie in Washington, D.C. were actually raised as well by very high-level officials from Australia, for example, which is chairing the G20 meetings. I actually believe that one can't just say that nothing is going to happen or nothing is going to change. But the issue, my view is that it has to be based on evidence. It can't be exhortations. We are small, we are special, we are former colonies. It has to be based on empirical evidence. So for example, what we are doing, we are designing a resilience index, okay, a vulnerability index, to prove to the international financial institutions that when there are economic shocks, these countries are going to suffer, and it will affect them or affect the Caribbean more because you don't have the big population to withstand an external shock, natural disaster or economic.
These countries are suffering now. Most countries in the Caribbean are going through some rough times. Since the recession of 2008, most of them have not rebounded. Even Barbados is in a serious fiscal situation. Countries like the Bahamas, rising debt, and the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, is bringing significant pressure to bear on these small developing countries. And who is coming to the rescue of these small developing countries pressed with these economic issues?
Well, I can tell you certainly from the technical standpoint on the issue of debt, for example, we have been providing very good technical advice, I would say. And in the case of Jamaica, as I mentioned, it resulted in $150 million of debt being written off. We have offered the same to the government of the Bahamas. We had a team that came here in March of this year. So we hope to advance this work in the Bahamas. And just in the Commonwealth, we have no program countries. We don't do a division between program and donor countries, rich, poor, north or south. It's a family, and the technical assistance that we provide to the government of Bahamas or to Trinidad and Tobago or Guyana in the Caribbean, it essentially comes at no cost. I think the Commonwealth, to be quite honest, is the most honest of honest brokers.
But Mr. Maharaj, when you look at from the perspective of in the Caribbean, right, among the ACP states, the European Union carries the brunt of the funding, right? Britain is a member of the European Union. Britain seems to have cut back its involvement in terms of funding of the Commonwealth Secretariat, because Britain itself has financial constraints, and being a major European power is finding it difficult to be financially involved in both blocks, the European bloc or the Commonwealth bloc, and so there's a loss, and as a result of that, the impact of the Commonwealth isn't that strong.
It's negligible.
It's not that strong.
I mean, I think that's one point of view you may have. I serve with the Caribbean Development Bank, and when I was with the Caribbean Development Bank, the largest financier, I think, in the Caribbean was then the Inter-American Development Bank. I don't know if the same obtains now, but I believe it may be the case. In terms of the United Kingdom, we actually had our Board of Governors meeting last Thursday in London, and the UK indicated that their commitment will remain the same in terms of financial resources for the Commonwealth. So in terms of the data, I mean, it suggests that the commitment remains the same. This is what was stated, and we have no reason to believe otherwise. The issue, though, I think, is that the Commonwealth is a smaller institution, and therefore with our new strategic plan, the intention is to be much more focused and to be much more specific. In terms of small island developing states and small states, of which 31 of our 53 members belong in that category, I mean, it really, I think, provides a strong platform for advocacy on a range of issues. We may debate whether it's irrelevant or relevant. I mean, my own view is that given what I have seen thus far, it remains of high relevance to member states.
What are countries like Nigeria with its oil wealth and South Africa with its mineral wealth contributing to the Commonwealth? What are they doing?
Yeah, in terms, well, there are different ways that one can contribute. One can contribute based on financial contributions. One can contribute in terms of expertise. A country like Nigeria or South Africa or India, because when we spoke about global advocacy, it's not only the United Kingdom, New Zealand, and Australia and Canada. India, South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, they're all very influential countries as well. And therefore, it is important for them to serve as
yeah, but what are they doing? What are they doing?
In terms of the advocacy on some of these issues, I believe we have their full support.
What about the advocacy of the Caribbean? The Caribbean is in as a bloc in advocating, or do you look at the Caribbean country by country?
Yeah, in terms of in London, I know Caribbean High Commissioners, including Antigua and Barbuda, the Bahamas, Trinidad and Tobago, they are very keen for the Commonwealth to continue working in the area of development. So they are very strong in that given development issues and challenges of the region. And that's, I mean, I'm responsible for economic and social development in the Commonwealth, and I mean, it has our highest priority.
Social development, many countries are going through significant challenges, Mr. Maharaj, and I guess education is a very important component of it. You would agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yes. And in terms of the funding that the Commonwealth puts out in terms of social development, speak to that.
Yeah. Well, to begin with, on the issue of education, the financial resources that we have available, it's not the resources that would be with the World Bank or the Inter-American Development Bank. It's a different funding envelope. But the important thing for us in terms of the work that we do is that the Commonwealth, we have a common language. We have a common legal system. We have a common law system, right? So I view the Commonwealth in the area of education and health as being a knowledge institution. So if it is that you want best practices, you want to know what is the best laws, what are the best experiences, we should be in a position to provide that to you. There's one big issue in the Caribbean in terms of social development that anywhere I go, I hear and I speak to the issue, and that has to do with the issue of youth and boys, the achievement of boys. Huh? So in the case of the Caribbean, this is an issue that concerns me. I've thought about it a lot. We are doing some pilot work in Jamaica, in St. Lucia, and St. Kitts and Nevis, and we would also like to expand to the Bahamas to understand why is this happening? Why are girls' achievement, why is it outstripping boys by so much? Why are boys dropping out of school? Why is it that in Trinidad and Tobago you have the primary schools, at the primary school level, more girls leaving than graduating than boys? At secondary level, the same. At tertiary level, the same. I understand in Bahamas, in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, it's only 15% of males who move on or who graduate. That's a serious and fundamental issue that we need to look at, you know, in the context of the Caribbean.
This has been going on for a long time.
Yeah, well, I don't know how long it has been going on, but I can tell you, I mean, it has reached a situation where policymakers have no option but to act.
Let me ask a very pointed question. And I don't think Bahamians, as Jones would put it, feel the Commonwealth Secretariat. What's the Commonwealth Secretary doing in the Bahamas right now?
Okay, certainly. So in the case of the Bahamas,
Yeah.
we did technical work that will result in your marine zone being expanded by 200,000 square kilometers. To my mind, that is very, very significant. So you would move beyond a 200-mile exclusive economic zone. That's one.
That's a project?
That we have done the technical work already. That is correct.
In which ministry?
I don't know the ministry that's responsible for your marine zone and environment.
So you expect Bahamians to feel you in that way?
No, well, I don't. You see, the thing is that we in the Commonwealth, we are not in the business of self-profiling and promoting our work. I mean, we work, I mean, under the radar. We provide technical support to the government of the Bahamas, and this is what we have done. And you can't but agree that this has major implications for a country like the Bahamas. In terms of debt which is tell me?
Bahamas can't control what they got now, 100,000 square.
No, but I
talk about expanding that.
No, but I can't speak to what the Bahamas may or may not control. But the important thing is that if it is that your resource base can be expanded to that extent, you can't but agree that that represents a valuable opportunity for the government and people of the Bahamas. That's my point.
But I think social development is especially important to Bahamians, and your project on boys, for instance,
to me, yes, that's more important.
Is a very important
Yeah, that's
project.
more important, yes.
And the extent to which you can help in
the
development, the educational development of our youth.
Yes.
And you expect to be felt that way, or you are just providing data?
No. I think, you see, I come from a development background, so I don't compartmentalize development. Okay? I don't see that there's governance, and I don't see that there's education, and I don't see there's health.
Yeah, but we need effective programs.
There are linkages. Obviously, you need effective programs. But we spoke earlier in the interview about the financial crisis and the situation facing the Caribbean. The reality is that as a Caribbean person myself, I value and see the importance of getting overseas development assistance, of getting concessional financing. But I think in the long run, as a Caribbean, we have to find a way of financing our own development. And therefore, you need to expand the economic pie to get the requisite resources to invest in health, to invest in education. So that's why expanding a simple thing like your marine environment would be able to get, you should be able to get additional income to make these investments.
Mr. Maharaj, what concerns me, this is what concerns me.
Please tell me.
I am the ambassador to FAO. And there was a regional conference in Chile by FAO. And one of the issues that all the CARICOM countries are unanimous on is the fact that we do not like the way these mega institutions operate. From the point of view that you have an agenda, and your agenda may not fit our national agenda. And so what we've done in FAO, we've got the FAO to change how they, with the programming schedule is, that our national objectives are paramount, and they are to assist us in achieving our national objectives. You see, I don't know if the Commonwealth Secretary does that.
But your strategic plan in the Commonwealth, does it take into consideration the national objectives of the Bahamas, for instance, or do you understand what the national objectives of the Bahamas are?
Okay, to start with, we provide technical and advisory support. I'm delighted that you made that point. We provide technical and policy support on a demand-driven basis. We wouldn't come to the Bahamas and say we want to work on debt, or we want to work on marine zone environment, or we want to work on economic restructuring. We come based on a request from the government of Grenada or the Bahamas. So it has to, and presumably that is owned by the government, and I have no reason to think otherwise.
Okay.
And our strategic plan just reflects the core priorities in terms of the work that we'll do in economic development, social development. We also do work in the realm of political issues as well.
So has the Bahamas asked you to, for instance, we have an urban renewal program going on here in the Bahamas, involving all sectors of the society. Has the Bahamas government, for instance, asked the Commonwealth for any assistance in terms of urban renewal?
No, I'm not.
Social development in any way?
Yeah, I'm not aware of any such request. I think the entity and the agency that has the most expertise in this particular area would be UN Habitat.
Okay. Let's take a break here on the program. We're on Jones and Company, and our guest on the program today is the Deputy Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Mr. Deodat Maharaj. We'll come right back.